Today we're talking about Hans Christian Andersen's strange and fascinating story, Thumbelina. This story is interesting because while it follows a lot of fairy tale tropes, it subverts a lot of them too. Starting at the very beginning, it starts with a woman who desperately wants a child. Now, while that happens in lots of fairy tales, what's different is that this woman doesn't have a husband. She's a single woman who wants to be a single mother. She wants a child, she doesn't want a man to get one. So she goes to see a witch, who is not an evil character in this story. He says to the witch, I really want to have a child, and so the witch says, take this barley, go home and plant it, and you're gonna get a child. This opening's so controversial that in the first English translation of this story in 1847, the woman who translated it changed this beginning. She had the woman be married, and she had the barley corn given to her by a beggar woman that she gave food in exchange. So she puts the barley in a flower pot, and it grows into this kind of flower that is described in the story as looking like a tulip, and the petals are all closed, like it's still a bud. And the woman kisses it, and at her kiss there's a pop, and the flower opens, and inside is a tiny little girl, Thumbelina. Now in English we say Thumbelina. This is the Danish name she's given, and it's significant because her name changes later. But it still comes from thumb and basically means that's how big she is. I just think it's really beautiful that Thumbelina is conceived by a kiss from her mother, from this sacred feminine female love, mother-daughter love. Like, that's all they need. That's all she needs to be brought into life. Thumbelina is happy too, and their world is characterized with complete innocence and happiness, but of course, like childhood, that has to end. While asleep in her walnut shell bed, Thumbelina gets stolen away by this evil mother toad who wants to force her to marry her stupid toad son. They hold her captive on a lily pad. Well, the mother does. The boy toad is so stupid that all he does is croak because he has nothing intelligent to say, and they just completely regard her as an object and don't care about how she feels. Thankfully, she gets rescued by some friendly fish and a butterfly who all feel bad for her because they say someone so beautiful shouldn't have to marry an ugly toad. I mean, I'd say anyone shouldn't have to marry someone against their will who's holding them captive, but whatever, they help her. She's getting away, but then she gets taken again. A maybug or a may beetle flies in and takes her to go be his woman. Even though she's super sad about it because she's captured again, she's so selfless and actually has empathy for other creatures, unlike all these creatures that do not have empathy for her, because she's sad that the butterfly is still tied to the lily pad that was helping her, and now she's like, well, if it can't get free, it's gonna starve to death or die. But nothing she can do about it. The bug that stole her doesn't care about it, and he takes her back to his people, but then all the other maybugs are like, ew, she's ugly, she doesn't have any feelers, she only has 2 legs, and so he's like embarrassed when she gets rejected by his friends, so he rejects her. But even though she didn't want to get kidnapped, when all the maybugs leave her stranded on a daisy, she sits down and cries thinking, oh my god, I'm ugly, I'm all those things they said, because she doesn't know any better. This whole thing can be read as a cool parallel to growing up and going through adolescence, especially as a girl. I feel like most of us can definitely relate to suddenly being thrust into puberty and feeling like we are prey to all of these people who come at us, but at the same time we don't feel beautiful enough and feel alone and rejected and like we're not made right. Like, both of those things at the same time is a lot. So she tries to survive on her own among the elements for a while. When winter comes, she's afraid she's gonna die, but then this field mouse takes her in and lets her live with her in return for basically working for her. She doesn't mind. She tends the dwelling in gratitude, and she feels safe and finally like, okay, at least I'm gonna survive. In the meantime, there's also this episode where she meets a swallow that is sick, and she helps nurse it back to health and sing it songs because she again is giving and caring and wants to help other people, creatures. The swallow is grateful and adores her, and so when he's healthy, he flies off, but he says, I'm gonna come visit you again. But just when Thumbelina thought she was safe, the field mouse is like, you know what? You need to marry my friend the mole. Mole doesn't try to completely kidnap her, and neither does the field mouse, but they pressure her. She does not want to marry the mole because she doesn't want to live underground in the darkness and never see sunlight again, which she's told will happen if she goes and is a good wife for him. That's gonna be her job. She tells the field mouse, I don't want to marry him, and the field mouse is like, shut up, you should be grateful. He's got plenty of supplies, and he's got a nice home, and he's got nice clothes. You should be grateful that this mole wants you. He's dependent on the mouse and doesn't know where else to go or what to do, so she's basically doing the death march toward the mole's house to to go be his wife. And then the swallow comes back and he's like, hey, I'll rescue you. Come with me. I'll take you away. We can live together. You don't have to do this. So she flies away on the swallow and they go off together. The swallow's actually kind and he keeps saying, you don't have to stay with me if you don't want to. And she's like, no, you helped me. I like you. Of course I want to stay with you. The swallow puts her down in an area of flowers, and as she's walking around, she sees this weird white column, and then she sees a man her size. Turns out he is the spirit of the flower, and he is the king of a whole people like him who are all flower spirits, fairies, because they have wings, and it says that they glitter and shine like they're made of glass. Gotta say, it did make me think of Edward Cullen for like a second when I reread it. And Thumbelina is so happy just because these are people who are like her. Finally, that's what she's been looking for. Community. People like her, where she belongs. And the king puts his crown on her head and he's like, marry me, be my wife, live with us. And she says yes. The fairy people all love her and they celebrate her and they give her presents, and one of the presents is her own pair of wings. They fasten the wings from a silver fly to her back and she can flit between flower and flower, and she's finally not helpless like she's been almost the whole story. They give her a new name, little M-A-J-A or M-A-I-A, depending on your translation, because now she's formed into who she was always supposed to become, like a butterfly. She's found love and belonging and loves herself. But since it's a Hans Christian Andersen story, there's got to be some sadness at the end, so the swallow is heartbroken and he flies away and goes to Denmark and flies into the window of a man and tells him this story. Presumably it's Andersen claiming he heard the story from the swallow. But still, it's an incredibly beautiful story that mirrors the story of growing up and figuring out who you are so much, in a lot of the ways that the Ugly Duckling does too. I love looking at this story as a mirror of the experience of growing up female. Thumbelina gets kidnapped and hurt and traumatized, but she makes it out. She survives and she finds herself. And it gives you hope, like if a frog's coming after you, or a bug tells you you're ugly because you don't look like his bug friends, or if you're being pressured to marry a mole, don't do it, because you've got this prince and this whole community of fairy people who are just like you, who want to embrace you as you are and won't force you to do something you don't really want to do or be something you're not. It's a great lesson for people of all ages. Thanks for listening, and check out my podcast, Folk Tales and Fairy Lore. Link is in my bio, and my book, Dust Spells, which is based on the 12 Dancing Princesses. And don't sell yourself short, even if you're short like Thumbelina. Okay, sorry. Have a good day.